بشوث جاكوم وعشر زكي شمع وخوب جوث زمزة في زيشمة أديها للساوة نايدو شارع أويرا 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 بشوث جاكوم.
Russia. Alright, is everyone here? Just messing, this isn't about Russia, this is about Georgia. It's just people either don't know where Georgia the country is, or they think that it's a state in America. And so I have to clarify, which it is all the time and it's fucking boring, so I just said Russia, but I'm not an imperialist, okay? We got that out of the way. Georgia. Specifically, Abkhazia. Ever heard of it? No. Let me tell you. It's the land of wine, it's the land of people who live up to 1,000 years old, right? That's all I needed to know. And it's also the land that was full of 300 black people up until, well, recently. You know, the 90s, 2000s, there was a bit of a scuffle, I'll tell you about that. But for now, Afro-Abkhazians.
متألي داب جرش تحت سردك قملي يهك شارو ببسنرا صوب شوب زياوي القاب بمقريا كنا بسبسر هاي ببرا همشتشنا واويل القاب دوزبشنا بزياو البوزات إيوانا واويل القاب واويل القاب بزياو البوزات إيوانا وردرا وردورا
No, you did not mishear me. There were indeed Africans living in Abkhazia up until the 20th century and partly even now. Before we get into the story of Afro-Abkhazians, of course, it's quite frankly intriguing and everything, but we obviously have to find out the history of Abkhazia and who even were the regular Abkhazians. Well, it starts off with little known people known as the Aupshwa or Apsia. Now, the origins of like anything in the Caucasus is pretty unclear, given the diverse ethnic makeup of the place, right? God given. But as far as we know, it all started off with three kingdoms: Abkhazia, Izakia, and Iberia. Not to be confused with Iberia, aka Spain and Portugal Iberia. This is Caucasus Iberia, different place, different name. The first one, Abkhazia, was also known as the Kingdom of Abkhazia, right? It was the first kingdom, but it was comprised of Kartvelians and Kartvelian speaking people first and foremost. And the Kingdom of Lazikia and Iberia. The first one, Kingdom of Lazikia, interestingly enough, came after the collapse of the Roman Empire. The Byzantine Empire, to be specific. Most important of which is the former, Abkhazia, which will be the one that will later become Abkhazia. Because it, like the other two, are all forms of Georgia. This is why Abkhazia is originally Georgia. This isn't pro-Georgian propaganda, this is just the facts, if anyone out there is one. But look, sure, look, it is what it is anyway. Well, it was populated by, I guess, the Kartvelians. Like I said, Byzantine Empire had a go at it. It was kind of like the, not the predecessor, but the forebearer, the grandson, you could say, of the Byzantine Empire, which Russia likes to call itself very often, quite ironically. Yeah, it is what it is. Like it was known to happen in medieval times, these vassal states of the Byzantine Empire soon dismantled after countless Arab raids, infighting I assume, and they then later on reunited into the Kingdom of Abkhazia, right? Finally, a state that's called Abkhazia, which it's debated who exactly started it, but historians assume that it was some kind of collaborative effort. Abkhazia was united with this aforementioned Iberia, which is in Spain, and became Georgia. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is the Abkhazians, right? Because since Abkhazia was always Georgia, who are these Abkhazians? Like Aupsia, Aupshwa, Abkhaz people, as I would call them for simplicity's sakes. Abkhazians, sorry for anything inconvenient. Where did they come from now? Well, they're described by historians as a warlike people, or a descendant from the ancient Heniochi tribe. So for the next 400 years, this region of Georgia, Abkhazia, would be bounced around between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. And at some point, around the 18th century, something really unexpected happened. Now, the rest of what I'm going to tell you is as much murky as it is historical, right? Because it's all down to speculation, really. We don't really have that many sources, but we have loads of theories. Now, before I start rambling off, I just want to state the three main theories surrounding the origins of the Afro-Abkhazian people. The first one is the shipwreck theory. There's a number of folk legends that are based on true events, according to one of them, which is mentioned in the memorandum of Ivan Isakov to Nikita Khrushchev. An Ottoman slave ship wrecked near the Abkhazian coast during a storm, with slaves who were brought up for sale. And the current Abkhazians of Afro-Abkhazian descent are the descendants of the survivors of that slave ship. Another legend tells about the Narts, with certain black-faced people from the Horn of Africa. The legendary Narts are said to have come from the Caucasus for a long African campaign, hundreds of African escorts who remained in Abkhazia. And the third theory is the Peter the Great theory, is that Afro-Abkhazians involved with Peter the Great, he imported many black Africans into Russia. And it's said those who were unable to assimilate in the northern capital of Russia, St. Petersburg, were generously given to the Abkhazian princess. Right, so that's the three main ones. The most fantastical popular theory about Afro-Abkhazians were that an Ottoman slave ship crash landed off the coast of Abkhazia, which was part of the Russian Empire, and the people assimilated in local villages, one of them being their most historical one, which is Adzubsha, and assimilated with the local population, right? That's not really specific, however. Where did they really come from? For example, our writer, Maxim Gorky, which I assume is true, they do indeed look Ethiopian. But here's the thing. There are two similar theories regarding how, if they were Ethiopians, got to, what was then the Russian Empire. First of all, there was the Prince Shevardnadze, who the theory states bought slaves from Ethiopia to work on his plantation. A similar theory about another prince, also from Georgia, Abashidze, who brought slaves from Ethiopia to work on his tea plantation. Now the second one seems a wee bit more realistic, because there is an actual Abash family of Afro-Abkhazians who spoke to journalists in the 1960s/1970s about, their history, the history of their family, the history of Afro-Abkhazians. We can speculate on this for days. It's a pretty murky subject, but what we know for sure is that over time these Afro-Abkhazians eventually assimilated into the local Abkhazian population, adopted the culture, the language, Orthodox Christianity even, and later on in Tsarist times, these Afro-Abkhazians were integrated into the Caucasian cavalry units and fought in all kinds of wars, from the Russo-Turkish War to World War I and even the Russian Civil War. But they weren't just relegated to Abkhazia. They were spread all over the Karabakh in Russia. Right, here's a picture of a Afro-Karabakian in Dagestan, for example. wearing a uniform, presumably of a cavalry regiment somewhere. And you know, this Abash family of Afro-Abkhazians really is like the bridge for historians to find out more about this unique culture, right? Like, for example, you know, the most famous member of this Afro-Abkhazian family is Shaban Abash, who served in a Cossack cavalry unit during World War One. Here he is in his cavalry uniform, joined the Reds in the Russian Civil War, and then became a deputy of the Communist Party of the Abkhaz ASSR, when that was a thing, you know, a devout communist and that. You know, before the 20th century, they also all only spoke Abkhazian, but then, as of the Soviet Russification, standardization of society, they had to learn Russian on top of that also, and started participating in the Soviet way of life. You know, being in collective farms, growing crops such as citricides and grapes and wine and all of that good stuff, right? They worked in factories, and like I said, spoke Russian, right? Just living the same life basically as any other Soviet citizen. And then his family would later go on to tell his story, most importantly the story of their people, in the 1970s. And the rest is history, right? Wrong. There's still one more thing. We've reached the 90s, and as is characteristic for Russia during those times, and let's be honest, every other time in history, they inevitably, some faces that were interested in it from there, started a conflict between the Alpsia people and the Georgians, which is still going on to this day, in fact. Right, now we're not going to delve into who started this conflict. It really deserves its own video, right? Specifically talking about Russian imperialism. That would be a great topic to discuss in the future, right? But we're not going to talk about it now, because frankly, it's a job for another video. But what happened. War between the Georgians and the Abkhazians started. Unfortunately devastated a lot of Afro-Abkhazian former communities and villages, including the village of Atzubsha, right, which was devastating during that war and also during the 2008 Russo-Georgian War. And since it's the historical place that Afro-Abkhazians come from, you know, their populations shrunk quite moderately after that point. It's a pretty sad note in both Georgian and Abkhazian history. And if we're talking about the modern day, modern world now, they're out and about somewhere, but their population is greatly diluted with local Abkhazians, right? Now, a lot of the community in the Caucasus now, they don't really take this whole thing seriously. They've heard about them, they're like, yeah, sure, there were some Afro-Abkhazians, quote unquote, on this territory, but they all moved away some long time ago, right? Some people even say, a Georgian news publication even said that it was a myth, you know, created by the Soviet Union to spread lies about the great and diverse nature of Soviet society. But as it stands now, no, it's not. Sure, a lot of them moved away, but you know, their population is greatly diluted, like I said. You know, some might have dark skin, frizzy hair, but still look overall Abkhazian. You know, some Africans in Cherkeskas dancing this ginka, and down in Khachapuri with 100,000-year-old wine. They do be living long there in Abkhazia anyway, that's all I know. lads. You know, thanks for supporting me. Thanks for, you know, commenting, liking, watching the video, raising my watch time. You know, unfortunately I ain't making money from this stuff yet, but that's gonna change, you know. Eventually I'll have enough subscribers to, you know, start a Twitch, you know, have chat, send me money and stuff, you know, so I can make more of these kinds of videos. But until then, recommend, I guess, what you want to see. Watch, like, subscribe, as always. It's been Dr. Sheep with you. Look, boys, keep the crack, mate.